Richie, first topic of the day. Florida State lands, I think, 5 transfer commits this week. If I'm missing anybody or we don't get to anybody, whatever. Like, this is not not necessarily the time for the all-out review and film breakdown of every single player. But we had wondered about some transfer portal movement. We had wondered where they would add guys, where they would try and improve the roster. I think that they've potentially improved the roster in probably one spot, maybe 2, but I think they've added a lot of depth. We can talk about each one of these guys here for just a sec, but the guy probably we'll start with, the best news first. Gavin Sawchuk, running back from Oklahoma, originally a 4-star prospect. I don't know if Florida State fans will remember this or not, but he blew, he lit us up in that Cheez-It Bowl, right? He had 100 yards, had a touchdown, had a reception for 8 yards, played really well in that game against Florida State. Has had a good career, almost 1,000 yards on 208 carries. Like, he's got a lot of production. Battled with a kind of a nagging hamstring last year that was a big deal and bothered him an absolute ton. In talking with people at Oklahoma, seems to be fully healthy, was battling out for RB1 spot there at OU until they got Jaden Ott, who is a bona fide, no doubt, number 1 type guy. When he transferred in, Oklahoma realized they were going to lose one of the 2 guys battling for the starting spot. So this, to me, this is a good pickup for Florida State. I've never been incredibly impressed with Roydell. Hopefully he makes me eat those words and he has just a breakout year this year. But I've never been super impressed with Roydell as kind of your RB1. I think he's fine for a change of pace. I think that this is a really good pickup for Florida State. He should be, until maybe Cromwell is able to take over. I think he could be your number 1. If he was going to do it at Oklahoma, I think he's got a good chance to do it here at Florida State. And 2 years of eligibility left. I think that he has a really good shot to have a good career here at Florida State over these last couple of years.
Yeah, and ideally when you hit the portal, you don't want to get someone who would be considered developmental. And I do not think that is the case at all here. You and I were both at that Cheez-It Bowl here in Orlando. And yeah, he was extremely impressive. And, unfortunately, sometimes even if you're a very good college player, with the transfer portal in this era, you could easily get recruited over by an elite running back, and that just happens. But that's not to say he can't be RB1 here at Florida State. Now, I'm not super down on our running back room. I'm not, by no means do I think they're, top 10, 15 in the country. But again, you're stacking depth, and this is talented depth, to your point, TJ, with production. And if he is as healthy as you're hearing, I think this is a very quality add. It's someone who can contribute day one, and ideally in the portal, that's what you want, is someone who can contribute day one, unless it's a rare case where it's a guy that has 3 years of eligibility left, or maybe 4 years, depending on how crazy the NCAA is these days. But I think he's someone that can come in. Gus Malzahn and Mike Norvell both want to run the football, so the more bodies, the better. And this is a quality body that they just picked up.
If you're feeling tired, sluggish, or just not yourself, it could be low testosterone. With my friends over at Emerald Medical, they are there to help you reclaim your energy and vitality with testosterone replacement therapy. With code DFNS that you can enter right on their website, you'll not only save money on your first month, you'll get a free consultation to start your journey. They are proud FSU fans just like you. Their owner, Chris, connects with Seminole listeners just like you, offering personalized care that you can trust. You can call them at the number below, or you can visit emerald-medical.com today to get your free consultation and get you back to feeling like the real you. So next up, another Gavin. Both these happened today. We dropped a pre-record on Sawchuk where I went into a little bit more detail on him from my buddy Jay over at Unfair Sports, covers Oklahoma, also Locks On Sooners. That is like live on not live, but that is available on the channel right now. Maybe check it out after this live video is done. But some really good information there, and a pickup that I'm really excited about. I think that he's going to end up being really good for Florida State. Picked up another Gavin today, a wide receiver from UNC. Back-to-back Gavins picked up is kind of interesting. Gavin Blackwell, a former 4-star recruit from North Carolina in the 2021 class. very limited production. I mean, if we're just being honest, a couple of receptions in 2021. He did have 18 receptions and a touchdown in 22, had 7 receptions in 23, had 4 receptions last year in 2024. He visited FSU on Thursday. And, Florida State, it's been reported that, and based on the kids visiting and guys they were targeting, it looked like they were looking for a kind of a wide receiver 3 replacement since Hakeem and Jaylen are gone. I don't know that this is necessarily your wide receiver 3. It feels like you've added depth with this piece, but very limited production in 4 years. I mean, in 4 years, what's he, 2 and 18 is 20. You got 31 receptions and doesn't have 500 yards, only 1 touchdown across 29 games. This one's a little bit puzzling to me. I would love, I think you're just looking for more production. And so, sure, I'd love to completely eat crow here and this kid go off for 700 yards and 8 touchdowns. But this is a little bit of a weird one to me. A kid that doesn't have much production, really wasn't able to do anything in 4 years at UNC. Hopefully he can turn that around and have a really good final season for Florida State. But the Sawchuk one, where I think you're getting a guy that's really, really talented, this one kind of makes me pause a little bit and wonder, all right, what are we seeing here in 4 years? He's not really been able to do much. Is this it's going to go one of 2 ways, Richie. It's going to be an absolute scouting gem of a performance by Mike Norvell to find a hidden talent, or we're going to look at it at the end of the year and say, yeah, you basically got what you paid for.
I have very little confidence. I think this actually seems to me like a desperation pickup, just to try and appease the boosters who maybe don't follow these players as closely, to say, hey, look, we brought in another receiver. I know we lost a few last week. Hakeem obviously was a 5-star coming out of high school. With him leaving, I just think it's a desperate move by Mike to say, hey, look, we brought in another guy. This was his high school recruiting profile. But when you think about it, like you said, when it comes to his production in college, over 4 years, there's nothing to get excited about. Less than 1 catch a game the past few years. It's just, I don't get it. I know there's more scholarships now, so you can have a couple extra guys on the roster for depth. I don't even know if I would call him a depth player, and I hope I'm wrong on this. When I saw the news and then it dug in a little bit, I just was not excited about him.
Yeah, not trying to be super down, but this one doesn't make as much sense to me. You've got 1 year left out of him, so it's not like you can develop him, for 2 or 3 years down the road. Like, that's kind of what you thought with Jaylen Brown last year, right? If you have him for a few years, he'll really develop into something. This guy's got 1 year left, and if he doesn't make an impact, then it's an interesting take for sure, and it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Love to be wrong about that. We need some playmakers. I would love to get back on here and eat crow and talk about how great he truly was in Garnet and Gold. Jarvis Boatwright Jr., a defensive back from USC, was there for 1 year, appeared in some games, but didn't really register any stats that I can find publicly. No real metrics anywhere. Nothing that I'm seeing that you're saying like, oh, okay, well there's that. Committed to Florida State during his official visit on Thursday. Does help out in the secondary a little bit. This is a guy that only having 1 year you can develop. Highly touted. I mean, he's a kid that committed to USC. I don't know how big of an impact he'll make this year. I do think that you could potentially have something going forward here, but Florida State picks up another defensive back, adds to that room.
Yeah, I think it being at his position that you really don't need much right now for Florida State. That's one of the areas where they are somewhat solid in the defensive backfield. But at the same time, bringing him in with multiple years to play, I think that's very helpful. That's a big thing for, when you go into the transfer portal, if you're taking a 1 year guy, you want him to be a proven stud who is going to produce. But you can afford at this position specifically to take a chance on someone. Obviously, he was highly recruited out of high school. That has a lot of really good measurables. So I think he's a good addition. And again, if you have the room and if you were super tight on scholarship, I'm not sure he's someone you take, but we are not there right now. So I think it's a fine take.
Yeah, and I'll correct myself before somebody in the comments did. He didn't register he didn't play in any games last year. I looked ahead too quickly at our next one, And so, yeah, don't quote me on that one. I was wrong. He didn't play at all, redshirted the entire year. Next up, Joshua Raymond, an offensive lineman from Vanderbilt, 6'4", 295 pounds, transferred after one season at Vanderbilt. Visited FSU on Wednesday. He committed on Thursday. Talked about, Coach Herb Hand and that being a big reason why he committed and wanted to play for FSU. Can play tackle, which would certainly be a big deal for FSU. He's got a bigger frame and can kind of be on your exterior, which is a big deal. Florida State needs the depth there, chose Florida State over UCF. And this is a situation where I never have a problem taking more guys at offensive line, especially if they play in the SEC. And I know that Vanderbilt's kind of that team in the SEC. They're not recruiting like most of the rest of the conferences, but I'll always take more offensive linemen, more big-bodied guys that can potentially play tackle. Feels like every offensive lineman that we've taken for the last 3 years has been a guard type frame. This is one that I have no problem with at all. I don't know how big of an impact he'll make this year. I think he'll be a reserve, kind of a depth piece, but you need that. It's hard to go an entire year with 5 offensive linemen, not getting hurt, not getting banged up. I never have a problem with taking offensive line.
Yeah, and if you can get an offensive tackle or someone who has the ability to play offensive tackle in the portal at the Power 5 level, I think you have to take it, given our current situation with how bad the offensive line was last year and how that room looks right now. I think, depth is important on the offensive line. I think 2013 was the last year where Florida State didn't suffer a single injury on the offensive line, which is extremely rare for any team in the country. Obviously, that worked out pretty well for Florida State. But at the same time, that we've seen in the past few years, guys go down, even if it's just for 1 2 weeks or a season-ending issue. You need guys who can step up and be ready. And Herb Hand, taking him from his previous stop at UCF, I'll take it just out of pettiness.
And then lastly, Jaylen Matthews, another offensive tackle from Rutgers, 6'6", 340-pound freshman from New Jersey, ranked 37th among offensive tackles in his high school class per on 3. Didn't record any stats, but did sign with FSU during his official visit Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe. Has full collegiate eligibility. Transferred as a 2025 class addition. Potential here. Again, I don't think that he plays this year. I think he's a development piece for down the road. But again, I have no problem bringing in big-bodied guys that Herb Hand can develop for the future. Obviously, we understand the situations that Florida State has with needing to win this year, or else how much does the future matter? I get that, but if you win enough this year to continue on, you are going to need these guys for the future. And I think one thing that I've kind of learned just in chatting with people, in interacting with different folks, there is a belief in what Herb Hand can do on the offensive line in teaching, and so I like both these offensive line pickups. They're not pickups for this year, and I think that's where we're kind of the most desperate. But if you get through this year, you do have to have something for the future. So I like both these offensive line pickups. I've got no complaints there.
Yeah, anytime you get an offensive line, and from a Power 5 school, which both of these guys were, that's encouraging. And you cannot teach 6'7", 340. You can teach, your footwork. You can teach, how to use your hands, but you cannot teach that type of size. So if Hand is able to work with him, and Storms can kind of transform his body into a better 340, or maybe even a 350, whatever it may be, or maybe it's just a much better 330. I don't care. If Hand is able to work with him, then I'm excited about that. Again, I will never get upset about getting an offensive lineman from a Power 5 school.
And Florida State does that twice, right? Both from the SEC and the Big Ten. I know it's Vandy and Rutgers, but still.
We're going to spin this however we can, TJ.
Work with us. Trying to be a little more positive. Here, I'll get negative in a second. The thought on Florida State specifically, I think they did a really good job at running back. I think they did a really good job at cornerback in bringing in a couple of additions. I would like to see a little bit more impact guys. I think they've brought in this spring window 2 guys that are impact guys in Sawchuk and oh man, Jeremiah Wilson at cornerback. I don't know why that name was escaping me. I think we used to have like a GA or like an assistant that was Jeremiah Wilson here, like late years under Jimbo. But anyway, I would like to see more impact guys. I don't know how much juice this staff has just in recruiting in general. I also don't know how much juice the staff has coming off of a 2-10 season or what the effort level is. It's so early in their tenure. With the season that we have ahead of us and how important it is, it's hard for me to be over the moon about development pieces that'll be good in 2 or 3 years. I think there's more of a want or desire to see guys that can come in and make an impact. But all of that said, most of this portal class seems to be wait and see for the future, or most of this window. Sorry, there's a lot of guys in the December window that in December and January that I think will play this year. But we've and we don't have to go through every position again. We've done that, like where we think we need more help. But I'd like them to address a little bit more, maybe on the defensive line, if they could find, maybe Boatwright is kind of a guy that can play for you in the secondary this year at safety behind Shaheem and Hussey. Yeah, that certainly would be welcomed. But yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more if they can. But I don't know how many true impact guys they're truly in it for at this point as we get into early May. That would, I'm not trying to complain about taking guys, but that would probably be my bigger complaint. The wide receiver take is kind of whatever to me. The offensive line, I don't know how big of an impact they make this year. So it's Sawchuk for me, and it's Jeremiah Wilson, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, it's again, it's a wait and see, and there's nothing that I think Florida State could do in the portal at this point that would make me think we're going from 6 to 8 wins or from 7 to 9 or anything like that. It's just it's scraps at this point. It's extremely unlikely that you have a huge name enter the portal. Keon Coleman was kind of that unicorn. I think he was a May entry to the portal. Obviously, he worked out tremendously, but I don't think we're going to see that this year. And if you do see that, they are not coming to Florida State.